Hello, I am Lori Horvitz, Professor of English at UNCA. I want to welcome you to the final event of the Fall 2023 Visiting Writer Series. It's a presentation by poet Eric Tran. Just to let you know, you can purchase copies of Eric's book, and he'll be happy to sign copies after the reading over there. Also, if you have a question for Eric after his presentation, please line up at the microphone here. And just to let you know that this series is sponsored by the English department, and this particular event is co-sponsored by UNCA's Department of Psychology. But before we get to Eric, I want to let you know about the Spring 2024 Visiting Writer Series. So there's 3 readings. On Wednesday, February 21st, we'll present the Catherine Min Memorial Reading, an evening to honor our beloved colleague and celebrate her I can't say that word, but her recently published novel, or it's going to be published in January, The Fetishist, which will be released by Putnam in January. Her daughter, Kayla Min Andrews, who helped edit the book, will be in conversation with Misha Marin. And Misha is a graduate of UNCA and author of the novels Sugar Run and Perpetual West. On Wednesday, March 20th, we'll welcome Natalie Pazil, author of the novel Queen Sugar, which was adapted into the critically acclaimed television series directed by Ava DuVernay. Pazil's most recent work, We Are Each Other's Harvest, is an exploration and celebration of Black farming in America. On Tuesday, April 16th, we'll be joined by Nima Aveshia, author of the memoir Another Appalachia, Coming Up Queer and Indian in a Mountain Place. These events will all take place here in the Blue Ridge Room at 7 p.m. And now I want to introduce you to my colleague, Diamond Ford, who will introduce our featured presenter.
Hey, can you hear me okay? Yes. Fantastic. Eric Tran is a writer of incredible range. His poetry demonstrates through the tenacity of tongue and teeth the full spectrum of human, what it means to be a vessel of woe and wonder. Reading an Eric Tran poem means reckoning, means recognizing the full gravity of simultaneity, means feeling at once compelled to cry, to laugh, to rage the stars down from their moon dust cubbies. Tran's poetry is, as he writes in his poem Pulse, the gasp and surrender of living this soft. Which is to say, Tran's poetry aims to accomplish the hard work of recovering the gay man of color's body from the tombstones we oft ascribed him. In this way, each Tran poem feels like a declaration of love. As Appalachian poet Adrian Blevins defines it, the problem with love poetry is that it must be felt and written by humans who never feel one feeling at a time. I mean, love has fear in it, and guilt, and misery, and a special kind of hallucinating loneliness. The problem for the poet is how to get such a hodgepodge into one coherent space. Except, what I admire about Eric Tran's poetry is that Tran's poetry doesn't create coherent space. It takes it. It demands, in its bravado, its bigness, its devious delight, living, the right to live, what Tran and his community has always deserved. Tran accomplishes in lyric and lexiconal lushness the kind of tenderness trained by communal love, family love, a love for pop culture, that in the gutter spread guide to prayer, Tran's poems traverse the voices of X-Men, Hermione Granger, Orpheus, and Fury Road. Meanwhile, Mouth, Sugar, and Smoke trembles with so many tendernesses. Even Louisa Beck and Miles Park of NPR's All Things Considered said about Angier, North Carolina, a poem that appears in Mouth, Sugar, and Smoke, quote, "I think that we get angry when something that we love gets hurt. And I love that this poem acknowledges that. And it also suggests that the thing to do with anger and despair is to reach out to the people we love, even to wish a stranger that they get to taste the maximum sweetness of a strawberry, that sort of well-wishing, and that reaching out is an antidote to despair. I need to believe in this moment, this reaching out beyond the walls of despair that have become our lives lately, haunted by harms and hard news. Each of us traversed through our weariness, our our woes to be here tonight. And it isn't that just one more testament to the power of Eric Tran's poetry. In mere moments, we will listen as Eric Tran reminds us of the necessity of our living. We are so, so lucky. Eric Tran is a queer Vietnamese writer and the author of Mouth, Sugar, and Smoke and The Gutter Spread Guide to Prayer, as well as the chapbooks Revisions and Affairs with Men in Suits. He's an associate editor for Orison Books. Tran is also a psychiatrist in Portland, Oregon. He completed his fellowship in addiction psychiatry at Oregon Health and Science University, his residency at the Mountain Area Health Education Center, graduated from the UNC School of Medicine, and holds an MFA from UNC Wilmington. Please join me in welcoming Eric Tran.
Ainger, North Carolina. I read about the winner of the Harris Teeter gift card and thought they lived in angrier North Carolina. A mistake small enough to slip into your pocket at the checkout line. But I admit I'm angry. 4 of my friends died this year. I would have more save the dates for wakes than weddings on my refrigerator door if 30-somethings did that. You may be seeing now why I'm angry. My friend said he was scared to die alone, and I said he was silly instead of, well, then let's get married. I admit my fist has tightened around my steering wheel as if to say, I'm okay if I'm not screaming, as if to say, look at all the control I have. I admit I'm so angry that I cry at surprise proposals now. I'm so angry I write down everyone's birthday. So angry I demand unending hugs. I am lousy and bloated with love. In anger, I apologize for not congratulating you sooner, Lisa M. of Ainger, North Carolina. I'm angry and I wish you the bounty of double coupon day, of dented cans sold for cheap, a slab of bloody roast with the most perfect marble, a flat of strawberries near spoil, right when they're sweetest. Thank you to Diamond for that introduction. When I first met her in person, I was, how you might say, very uncool, and had a fanboy reaction about her very excellent book, and that evening was even more stunned by possibly one of the greatest readers I've ever seen in person. So it's an honor to be your friend and to be in this room with you. Thanks also to the UNCA Department of English and Psychology and the Visiting Writers Series, particularly Lori and Evelyn, for having me. Thank you all for being here. I have some sad and horny poems for you all tonight. Some from my book, Mouth, Sugar, and Smoke, and some new ones that I'm still tinkering with. Just as a forewarning, some poems tonight will mention substance use, mental health, will use bad words, and involve quite a bit of gay butt sex. So if that is not for you, this next poem is a good time for you to exit. This one's called Mantra. I'm not a smart man, but I'm a loving one. That's the mantra I'm trying to make popular, but so far no one's latched on. Even worse, not a single person has laughed. But I mean it. The way I was once such a heartbroken man, I took a walk around the block to find some joy and had to lie down right there in the middle of the sidewalk, a fence of daffodil. I believe in this mantra the way I believed in this scrawny teenager at my gym, trying to bench a bar stacked wide with plates. When he managed to get the weight up his spotter, another high schooler shaped like a Twizzler leaned down to share his delight, and right there, between the rope pull down and the hack squat, they kissed. I'm not the barbell rushing up its path, but how it rests in your calloused hand. I'm not the sunrise, but how you wake and are still unsure what could still be a dream. Sometimes the wind blows by my ear a question. Will anyone love me how I love the pure pith of a candied lemon rind? Then I remember. I'm not an answer or even a question, but a sheet of paper. Blank or ripped or doodled, I don't think it matters that much. I don't want to be a poem. I want to be the breath when it's over. I spent about 6 years in Asheville doing my med school rotations and then my residency in psychiatry over at Mayhec. I'm really, really happy to be back, and I'm also very, very tired. I would ask if anyone else is tired here, but that feels kind of like a bad faith question. So I'll just cut out the middle part and say, you're all very tired, aren't you? And when I'm tired, I just start hacking out things that don't seem essential anymore. Sometimes that means I don't shower, and sometimes I don't pick up my socks or my work pants. But sometimes when I'm very lucky, I'm too tired to pretend to be anything other than someone who is full of grief, if I'm full of grief, or someone who's full of love, if I'm full of love, and as it so happens, often I'm both. And I say that because Mouth, Sugar, and Smoke is about being in love with someone with an addiction to opiates. And despite the fact that it's been out for a couple years now, I feel still so self-conscious and embarrassed to read poems about being in love in all of its beautiful and wretched ways. And as I was telling my friends earlier, if something scares me, that often tells me to run towards it. So I'll read you some tonight. Trust metaphor. He gave me his box of pills to taper out, and I held it in my hand like a bird with a broken wing. No, like a trusty, neglected rag tossed in my trunk, or a favorite resentment I could revisit day after day after day. A worry stone, a paper cut on my finger's webbing, the squeaky step to his apartment for each morning sacrament. What faith? Even when I forgot his dose, he'd say, "It's okay," through his fever's tremble. He knew I'd be back, and better. A ballerina twisting in a music box. The first man I loved who wasn't my father. My college roommate, his closet full of Abercrombie and Fitch, a pillow top of loose curls shaking as he puked in my bed. An hour before, his drunk friends returned him without a single instruction. What did I know to do but leave the door open, practice my chemistry and calculus like being good might keep anyone alive? This is a lesson in love as vigilance, as hesitation between breath. A smart boy sees himself in a fog-drunk mirror, and does he open the door like a wound between bedrooms? One day, a man I love will ask me to stay through his withdrawal, then demand I leave so he can satisfy a craving of another sort. A mouth, of course, is an escape, and two will double the exits. What bounty? I resent no one the instinct to run. My first love's friends returned afterwards, not to see if he was okay, but to apologize to me. He and I don't keep in touch. When he moved out, I cried like an overdue rain cloud, bloodletting a bruise on the sky. I love reading this when I come back because I think you all will sort of recognize what I'm referencing here. Commuting by the Confederate flag on I-40. And this line spills into the next one, so I'll just do that again. Commuting by the Confederate flag on I-40, flown half-mast. I want to write about the suffocating enormity, but against the sky's slick skin, it dangles like a tired bandage. I don't want to forgive so easily. I want to play the angry faggot. But in truth, I burn to know what grief demotes your pride, neighbor. Did you lose your son, a lover, your dog? Does it matter that a man I love has died? One of the last things he said to me was, "Be nice, I don't feel well." I mean, we're all so small. I'm scared for any of us to run out of gas in an unfamiliar place. Remember? Coasting slow, an action so gentle you could forget to breathe. I want to plug an event tomorrow. The UNCA Department of Psychology will be hosting a panel about Asian and Asian American Pacific Islander mental health tomorrow. And I'll be speaking there with several other mental health practitioners. I think it's at 5 p.m. in the Mountain View Room in Sherrill. Is that correct, Evelyn? Yes, I got some thumbs up. I'm also told there will be Filipino food, along with the other brilliant panelists. A feast for all sorts of things. A couple years ago, 6 Korean women were killed in a spa in Atlanta, Georgia, which is kind of a canary for anti-Asian violence that's been kind of at the center of US identity, both recently and in history. I think the report is that there's been 11,000 attacks in 2021 alone. And right after that shooting, I was assaulted and had a resulting concussion, and the Asheville API diaspora was an incredible lifeline to me during that time. So these next couple poems are for you all and for anyone who needs them. At the AAPI support group Zoom, everyone waves goodbye with both of their hands. Secretly, I've felt that a poem and its title should resist each other. If one is clear to parse, the other should be like a knot in your hair. But what if I was clear? In that Zoom, I cried when I saw faces that looked like mine, faces that looked at mine. What if my hands did something more than resist? I'm sure that more than once in a poem I've turned a set of knuckles into lips, but let me be clear. No one should kiss you like that. Recently, at work, a man punched me above my mouth, and in the swirl of a concussion afterwards, I remembered the news. Elderly Asian people assaulted on the street, a man's face cut open in the seafood aisle, murdered Korean women who are known by their professions and not their names. In Vietnamese, the word to remember is also the word to miss. And when I say it, it sounds like the English word to know. When I open my hand, Maybe I'm offering something or asking for something, or maybe I just want us to know all there is to hold. Once at Vietnamese school that I went to on Sundays, I tried to steal from the snack bar. I grabbed more bags of chips than I could afford, hoping to sneak away in the chaos of all of us tiny children grabbing at sweets. The elderly cashier caught me, and I said I'd pay even though I couldn't, and she said, "I know." My war-flung mother admitted she is afraid even now that one day I might feel hungry. And even though we're not so poor anymore, she sends me food that threatens to burst my freezer. At the hospital, they gave me ice packs to nurse my lip, my head. A bruise opens like fingers. Imagine touching anything so gently. In Vietnamese, to need sounds almost like caution. But imagine a life absent of either. My palms as field of flower. Would you take a bouquet to remember me? Would you marvel without touching? Would strangers walk by and take a large, indulgent breath? Will we all die? Yes, and yes, and yes, and yes. Ode to my fat head. You ripe, seedy watermelon, who wouldn't tap you for a little bit of sweetness? My gaudy piñata bursting at the seams with teensy bottles of booze. Sure, glass rattles a pretty melody, but plastic bounces back for more abuse. Ballbuster, brim breaker. Ooh, out pops a tiny little rabbit. Time-triggered safe, dented can of soup. The tongue has no need for eyes. Yes, thank God for you, broken piggy bank. What emergencies you floated us by. Some maps look wrong until they're stretched out across the globe. That's how much I love you. I will hold you how a storm holds its eye, how the moon is named hot and hunter, strawberry snow. Once you drowned out the sun, the whole town was awash in terror. Admit it, you smiled. Even an empty thing can be so heavy to carry. I'm currently working on a book about violence and its relationship to love and community. And I wanted to share some of the authors who I'm mining from, which is to say I'm stealing from, about the same topic. Brian Washington says, love is a tangible thing. You can breathe it in and hold it and push that shit right back out of your lungs. Bell Hooks says, begin by always thinking of love as an action rather than a feeling. And Solmaz Sharif, who I'm paraphrasing here, says that we inhabit this idea of empathy, but more fully and powerfully, we should enter the space of love. And I'm a pretty devout, if I can be devout, I'm a pretty devout servant to this idea that love isn't love if it isn't an action. If love must be given without the desire for thanks or social clout, and often love is actually an action that costs us something or risks something from us. And to that end, I wanted to give an example that love to me has been calling my elected officials to ask them to call for ceasefire in Gaza. because to love anyone is to want for their safety. And if you need help figuring out how you can love in this way or others, you can come find me afterwards. Oliver de la Paz says the instinct of love is to worry. And that feels like a really concise summation of worry and love, how love causes worry, how we worry over love. But I want to lead you all with a couple poems that might suggest that worry may be a path towards love. Eric Tran delivers his own eulogy. He left me instructions to say he loved you, as any hot-blooded American man loves a good bologna sandwich. So much that he put chips between the layers of meat so you could hear his love from down the hallway. He loved you as much as when he was right and loved you as often as when he was wrong. He loved you like rain because it's too easy to love sunshine. And he loved you like sunshine because it's important to love sunshine. His love for you was his tongue at the bottom of a peanut butter jar. His love for you was a wet slap of roses on the back, was demanding more hot fudge, just one more bedtime story about how humans were once perfect creatures with 2 heads, 4 of each limb, until the jealous, lonely gods split them in 2. He loved you aspirationally as a mess of threads you have to burn to keep from unraveling further. He loved you so that when he said goodbye, he meant, baby, come a little closer. Even now, he's dreaming about loving you. He's pushing some rock uphill to practice holding you up. He's got a coin under his tongue that he's named after you. He loved you, but not like he could admit that he wanted you to say you loved him as well. I know, there's a lot to unpack there. But there isn't enough time amidst the metaphors and breath and asides about fresh coffee and crusty sheets and secret keys and flowers. My God, that man loved flowers. There wasn't enough time, maybe there's never enough time for anything other than his last words, I love you, 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 I love you. This is my last poem for the night. Thank you all for having me here and for letting me read these new poems. And thank you all to the staff who moved this podium, because otherwise it was blocking my outfit. You all are doing God's gay work. This is called Party at House from my friend McKinley. In the sun-spattered morning after my post-breakup one-night stand, after asking this guy all weekend to wreck me, after admitting it's flipping a coin if bottoming will delight or bleed me, I shared with my straight friend the shame of this rebound, that night's massive third leg. How I was so swept to the ground that I stole that man's sock so that my life might still smell like him. That in the last inevitable, enviable, elephantine careening towards the edge of blowing my load, for I let my heart go free for the first time in months, and myself, and that man's still throbbing dick. My friend, so loving and so straight, considered his regret black coffee and said, you know, you shouldn't show up to a party at your house and be upset when is there. But you don't know, I wanted to say. My rebound felt warmth spilling down his leg and asked if that was his cum leaking out, and I had to say, no, that's me. The stink of me that has nowhere else to hide. You don't know, I wanted to say. I still think about another man who hit me too hard and I didn't ask him to stop. Instead, I offered to blow him in exchange for a moment of relief. I remember licking blood and bowel off my teeth and was grateful for the escape. I wanted to tell you, last year, a beautiful man forced his hands onto me, and I wanted nothing more than to be asleep. What use is a eating grin when you could have silence instead? When my rebound left, I stripped down the bed and left the sheets fall like kudzu across a starving field. I dreamt of them grabbing my legs and that I caught myself. Friend, I want to believe that you believe that I'm strong enough in some ways that matter. I want my body to be my body. I want my body to be known and somehow still mine alone. Maybe I want you to say, Eric, of course you're strong and against what scares you most. Of course you're so beautiful and so goddamn stupid to think your body is somehow separate from mine. When we love each other, when we hold each other, no light will pass between us. I mean, we will hold each other like the moon holds up the night. Friend, I want you to bring your knuckles to my door. Tell me to answer and admit, welcome, it's me. I could tell you how I haven't straightened up for company, but that there's cake in the freezer just for moments like this. Friend, say, yes, traffic was awful. We experienced such awful things together. And I'll be a darling. Take my coat. Thank you all.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Eric. We're going to get the mic on in a second. But if you have questions for Eric, please come on up to ask. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Please come on up to ask a question, and the first person who comes up wins.
She's behind you.
Oh, sorry.
Hi.
You could just talk.
Oh. Hi. So I have a question. What kind of mindset do you prepare yourself when writing these poems? Because after listening to them, they are gorgeous and beautiful. I just am interested in what kind of mindset you are in before writing them.
Yeah, hi, what's your name?
My name is Maddie Haler.
Maggie?
Yes.
Maddie, nice to meet you. Thanks for being here. Thanks for your question. Thanks for saying that my poems are gorgeous and beautiful. I guess the mindset I have everywhere is to be gorgeous and beautiful. But that's a great question. There's a poem that I'm going to share in a class that I'm visiting tomorrow that's about queer honesty. And there's something, I think, up to if you're a marginalized person, which, could be ethnicity, could be sexuality, could be gender, could be, just a feeling that you have. You feel like you have to be extraordinary just to be accepted. And that version of extraordinary isn't always the version of extraordinary that we want. It's a version of extraordinary that we assume other people want from us. So I'll say that my earlier poems were quite successful in the way that they were successful for someone else. And the mindset that I have in my poems right now is what feels honest to me. And I say that sort of solemnly now, but really in my head what I think is like, what dick joke makes me laugh? And that usually leads me somewhere. Yeah, thanks for your question.
I am also glad they moved the podium because that outfit is gorgeous. One question that I like to ask a lot of the poets that visit here is that also as a poet myself, I find a lot of there's certain emotions that I'm drawn to most often in my writing, and so I was wondering when you first started writing, what was that emotion that drew you the most to poetry? Mm-hmm. And then to follow that, how have you challenged yourself outside of that emotion into others?
Mm-hmm. And what was your name?
I'm Mo.
Mo, nice to meet you. Thanks for coming. To repeat do I need to repeat the question? You're mic'd up probably better than I am. The question is, what sort of emotion draws me to writing poetry? I'm going to do that infuriating thing where I sort of answer around the question that you have, because I think what I want to answer is this idea of like, why is poetry so sad? Or why is it so hard to write poetry that is happy? And so there's something that I'm still thinking about with Diamond's introduction of how this poetry calls us to simultaneity. Have you all seen the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once? Yeah, great. If you haven't, what a joy awaits you. And in this movie, it's kind of this idea that we're all living so many different identities all at once, and so many feelings and so many possibilities all at once. And I think that people have this offense to poetry being sad because they think that sadness or grief somehow must be sequestered from every other experience we have in life, as if somehow when we love, when we laugh, when we orgasm, there isn't a little bit of grief in there. Like to think about the French word for a sneeze, which is it's a small or a small death, which means orgasm. So I guess your question is what emotion draws me to writing poetry? And the answer is all of them, right? To make sure that all experiences are represented in a way that feels fair, not because we're seeking justice, but because if we don't recognize that all things are happening all at once, we can't experience them all at once.
All right. Thank you for answering that, and thank you for sharing your joy and grief with us today.
Yeah, thanks, Mo.
Hi. So you said that you had lost somebody that you loved to addiction and stuff. How did you translate those feelings into poetry and sort of sort yourself through that, if that makes sense? If that's too personal of a question, I'm sorry, but
No worries. What's your name?
Ruby.
Ruby? Ruby, nice to meet you. Thanks for coming. The question was, I mentioned in this poem losing someone to addiction who I loved, and how do I write about that? I have to admit, again, where I amalgamate a lot of stories all at once to make an emotional truth. I mean, I did lose someone to addiction. Whether or not they're dead, I factually, I don't know. But in a sense, they are lost to me in that way. I think there's many reasons to amalgamate and bend your stories, particularly if you are of marginalized populations. A surefire way to succeed in the world is to mine your trauma and sell it, which is going to get you pretty far, and then you're left as butchered meat. So this is sort of a long way of saying amalgamating your stories and changing your stories to suit your needs is also a way to protect yourself and sort of choose what stories you share with other people. There's not a reason to, well, what am I trying to say here? People will demand a certain version of you for themselves. Well, you don't have to give it to them. Yeah, thank you.
How has being Asian affected your journey with your sexuality?
And what's your name?
Bryce.
Bryce, nice to meet you. Thanks for coming. How has being Asian American affected what with my sexuality?
Your journey.
My journey to sexuality. I mean, maybe there's this similar theme that we're coming across now that I'm leading you to, and I'll take the blame for that. Being a person of color and being desired is a tricky space, because the standard of beauty is to think that there's a standard version of beauty is ridiculous, right? There's no standard person in the world, and yet it's been standardized to a European set of features. And to quote unquote succeed in that world, you have to conform to that, which either means separating yourself from your identity, or alternatively trying to find a niche that really celebrates your identity. And either of these is fine. However you want to survive in the world is however you want to survive in the world. But I propose another option: what people want from you. In the end, the person who you need, oh my gosh, the person you need to care about finding you the most sexy is yourself. Thank you.
Thank you. I actually have one more question.
No. Yeah, please, go on ahead.
Have you always felt able to write poetry?
Have I always felt able to write poetry? Able is a funny word. I think a lot of poets will say, I wish I didn't have to. So I actually started writing prose. I studied nonfiction for my MFA. And then I realized I was spending hours on my sentences because sentences matter, because language and lexicon shapes who we are as a society. And so to me, I can't take that very lightly, or in fact calls us to take it very seriously. That's why language matters. And not to like hype up poets too much, but because we care about how language works, we are charged with challenging how lexicon shapes our society and offering alternatives to that. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to say I actually got chills from your poems, so glad I could come.
That's really sweet of you. Whenever I give that warning of like, please leave if you need to, no one ever leaves. And I think it's because everyone's a sad pervert. And I just gave you permission to do that. Next sad pervert.
Hi. This question's a little, I guess, different from the previous ones, but I'm just really curious about sort of a bit of your biography. How have you balanced like being a poet and being a doctor, and the journey of like, you know, medical school residency being so time-consuming and so geared toward like one specific understanding of the world, where poetry is so much different? Like how did you balance that, I guess?
That's a great question. What's your name?
Forbes.
Forbes? Thank you for being here, and thanks for your question. The question was, how does one balance being... I'm such an idiot. The question was, you know, how do I balance being a poet with the demands of medical school residency, being a doctor? And particularly, well, I guess there's two questions to that, right? Like, how do I balance the logistics of that? But then how do I balance this philosophical idea of each of these fields wants us to believe that the world operates in a certain way? I think logistically, I have to say I'm a terrible student. In the sense of like grade-wise, my grades are absolute, which, you know, they should be. Like, what does it matter? I mean, Lori Neville, cover your ears. But grades don't matter. And I have to say, like, for most of my career, well, who cares? I'm not in training anymore. For most of my careers, I would like make up meetings that I had to go to, but my meeting was with myself, you know? So like, if you like find things that are important, like, why does someone else get to dictate what you do with your time, right? So to that extent, like, steal time. And I think what's important about the second question you have about how to balance these philosophical ideas of we know how the world works. I don't think any field knows how the world works. And if you go down into the history of any of it, no one who founded a field knew how the world works. To quote one of my own poems, because I'm a Leo, I'm not an answer or a question, but a blank page. And I think that's actually what calls people to go into any field at its core, is that we're all blank pages. The reason I think why we all require kind of certainty in any field that we do is that we want a kind of safety from the unknowable, but that we're also pushed to be really efficient and to achieve and to hustle, and the easiest way to survive that is to be as efficient as possible. And as I said earlier, man, steal time, be as slow and as inefficient as possible, because that's where you get really great answers. Not answers, you have a good time anyways. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. First of all, your poetry, it was beautiful. It was so intricate. I loved hearing every bit of it. What I have to ask is, the poems that you read at least cover like so many different topics, so many things. But what I wanted to ask is, like, what reason do you have to write poetry? Like, why do you write poetry?
Yeah. What's your name?
Rachel.
Rachel. Thanks for being here. The question is, why do I write poetry?
Like, I guess what it like means to you when you write it. Like, what do you write it for? Yeah.
Yeah. What do I write it for? I don't want to be dead. I don't want my loved ones to be dead. The first book that I wrote is called The Gutter Spread Guide to Prayer, and I would burn up if I walked into a church, and yet this idea of prayer is so important to me. Spirituality is one of the strongest protective factors we have against suicide. And yet that's something that is forbidden or taken away from so many communities, particularly gay men. And how can we sit there and say that there's something that's so important and so protected, and yet is taken away from a community that we love so much? And so then out of love, I wanted to take that there. And poetry is nothing if not prayer. Prayer is nothing more than something that you pay attention to. And if prayer means survival, so does poetry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any more questions? Okay, we go. This will be our last question.
Oh, last two questions. There's one person behind. I got you, girl.
Hey, Eric. It's me, On. This is kind of a question that will bleed a little bit into the panel that you will be on tomorrow. So this is a good little sneak peek for those of you who are here who want to join that panel tomorrow. I am in awe of your authenticity, and oftentimes in Asian American experiences, we are often taught to mask and often taught to save face for the sake of the family. And I'm wondering what your process has been like for you to challenge that masking and to allow yourself to present in kind of this authentic way through the work that you share with those and with other people.
Yeah, hi, On. Thanks for being here. On will also be on the panel tomorrow, so plug to see him there. The question is, how do I access that authenticity, or what do I do with the work that I'm doing? Can I share with you all just like a ridiculous story? So you all saw Everything Everywhere All at Once. My costume was Jopu Tupaki in the bagel piece with the giant headpiece. Incredibly unsexy. Like no one would want me in that. I mean, everyone. Don't shake your head. Everyone would want me in that. But I took it to this Kim Petras concert where everybody's costume was just a wonderful slut, which is a great currency in the world. But there is this kind of okay, hold that idea in your head. I'll come back to that. This is a lyric essay, so hold that idea in your head. Your question was, I think a lot of AAPI people are taught to mask to save face. So to mask is to put on a different identity, to save face for the family, which is to be respectable for the family. I think that's absolutely true. I think something that I am interested in and take actually even more offenses at is how often we are not required to mask, but tricked into masking to survive outside of our families. So as I was saying earlier, Asian men are not considered sexy. Like, OkCupid came out with this brilliant scientific report that the least messaged people on their apps were Black women and Asian men, because Black women are seen as too masculine, Asian men are seen as too feminine. And so that we're taught to be desirable, we have to mask in a certain way, or again, appeal to a certain audience that otherwise doesn't appreciate us fully as human. So I guess the question that you have is, how do you bring authenticity to the moment? I mean, like, I could have dressed as a wonderful slut. Like, I have, many of these outfits. But one, it was cold, and two, that wasn't necessarily what called to me for fun that day. And I guess the question that I ask myself is, who is this for? It could be for someone else if you want to be, but if it's for you, then give yourself what you want.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Ann.
Hi. I think that the way that you write about sex is really brave and just fantastic. And I was wondering how you navigate writing about a topic like sex while inhabiting a marginalized identity, and particularly with fears of like fetishization or scaremongering around queer sexuality.
Yeah. And what's your name?
Mars.
Mars, thank you for your question. First, I love your question, and two, I think it would be so great if during sex someone was like, Eric, you're so brave. Because I am. But I guess the question is how do you write about sexuality in that way as a marginalized person? And I think that's a very valid question. Like, how do you write authentically? How do you bring your full self to be scrutinized? And also, I think that a similar question is, how is someone with such authority, because I am a doctor, how is someone with such authority able to write about sex too without being afraid of not absconding, whatever the opposite of that is, giving away his authority by admitting that he likes anal sex? And I think both of these are rooted in this idea of like, what's wrong with desire? What's wrong with being who you are? So often, I think that people's reactions to us are not about us, but are actually reflections on them. And that's often a comfort that I have to keep close to me, because while I'm answering An's question of like, what do I want for myself? What am I doing for myself? As Diamond has said, as Brian Washington, as Samal Sharif, as Bell Hooks has said, to love, and then by extension to want, is to risk something. And not risking something means that that's not love, but fantasy. So when I write about sex and my own body as either a marginalized person or someone with a lot of authority, because we have to admit we all have components of this. We're both marginalized and oppressors ourselves. In writing about sex in that way, am I writing out of love or am I writing out of fantasy? Thanks, Mars. Thank you all.
Thank you.
If you're interested in buying a copy of Eric's book, he's happy to sign books back there. And thank you all for coming.